Okay, so I'm Jeremy Davies from the Fatherhood Institute, and I'm here today with Baz Price, who has hit the headlines for challenging his employer over their shared parental leave arrangements. And this is a legal battle that he's been involved with for about 3 years. Is that right, Baz?
About that, yeah.
Yeah. So the story is, so Baz and Laura live in Wales. And when their first baby was due, they made the decision that ideally Baz would be the one to take a good chunk of time off to look after the baby, which would allow Laura to keep working and not for her career not to fall off a cliff. And so Baz went through the process of applying to take shared parental leave, at which point he discovered that enhanced pay was not available for him to do that, which kind of put a kibosh on the whole thing. So, Baz, can you tell me a bit more about what happened at that point? So we're talking about, this was in 2018, yeah?
That's right, yeah.
So you applied to your employer to do this, and what did they say?
It was I think it was the February of 2018 when I had supervision with a manager, and I sort of shared that shared that Laura and I were pregnant, and this is like the route we'd like to go down. So we sent kind of like just a friendly email, basically just a question, what's available, and then sort of came back with the shared parental leave policy available. So then in April we applied, and unfortunately it took 13 weeks from that date to get a response back, which basically said that no, there's no enhanced pay. And I was the first person to request shared parental leave. So it's only been since 2015. So long story short, we had 3 weeks to prepare for the birth of our first child, and we were hoping if there was enhanced pay, that would be good to go, because I think there was a bit of criticism towards me, especially when I was later on in the sort of legal process, that why wasn't I aware that there was no enhanced pay. But actually in the policy, the very first paragraph is in bold, I believe, at the bottom, sort of says it's up to the employer whether they offer enhanced pay. So some employers like the NHS and the police and other sort of private companies like Aviva, they do offer that enhanced pay. So I was hoping that, given the values of our employer, that's, being progressive, being the big word that sort of shines in my eyes, that this would be a thing, this would be an option. It would be, great for us as a family. As you said, Laura could then, wouldn't be forced to take a career break. And it just sort of highlighted the disparity with the gender pay gap, the gender care gap. It just completely shines a massive light on what's lacking, really. So Eliza was born then in August, and then we had really fortunate, really healthy, fantastic birth, and and she's got a lot of vim and vigor about her now, 2.5 years down the line. But so that's kind of our story from where it began, really, and then the rest was pretty stressful.
So so I suppose, so basically what you were being told was that there was statutory pay for however many weeks it is, that would be available, but so your employer wouldn't be enhancing the pay for you on shared parental leave in the way that they would if in the way that they do enhance maternity leave and also adoption leave. Is that right? And so on that basis, you made the brave, mad, or whatever decision to go to tribunal, yeah? And so what happened?
It all came off the back of a conversation I had with two friends and colleagues. One was a mum, one was a dad who'd adopted, and both of them sort of said, you know, this is madness, the fact that you can't get hands pay. So that's what sort of fired us really to think, well, you know, if we don't put our hands up and challenge this, nothing's going to change. So basically, once we put a grievance in, we had a lot of apologies came back about the delay more than anything because of the 13 weeks. Because Freedom of Information said that I think adoptive it took 2 or 3 weeks to come back, and maternity was 6, so ours was 13. And in fairness to them, I was the first one, so it was a bit of a hot potato. Right. I don't think it bounced between different services. And sadly, on that one, when it came to the crunch after I'd applied to the employment tribunal and got through the sifting and actually got a date, it was all put down to the human error of one individual who I've never met, and I'm sure it was just a massive scapegoat issue for me because it was a massive broad picture of what they should be doing and not blaming an individual. But so when I put in for the application, I thought, you know, this is quite a positive subject. Hopefully I'll get some support from an agency or hopefully legal support, I was thinking. So throwing a bit of a Hail Mary of hope, really, thinking that, you know, I'm going to get some support. And I applied to lots of people and I got lots of advice, but no one was willing to kind of to support me kind of there shoulder to shoulder physically, because I'd say I'm quite switched on common sense wise, but in terms of my legal skills, they're really so after I applied, despite trying my best to get support, I ended up having to kind of do the process myself, and just it's like a new language, trying to read through the different not just the application process, but putting in your I can't think of the acronym now, but it was acronym city. Everything was just a wash of confusion and legal stuff. So so when it came to the crunch, I had to put in my notice of a hearing to say this, you know, this has been accepted by the employment tribunal. It's going to be on, I think it was January the 14th, 2019 was going to be the original hearing. And so this is where the frustration just begins, and it's hoop after hoop of just shenanigans really. But we kind of did the best we could. But after we applied, we set my list of documents, which were things like different comparators, similar to the Ali case, which was had failed unfortunately by comparing dads to mums biologically, whereas ours was after that failed was focused mainly on adoption leave comparator. But once we got everything signed and ready to roll, I handed my documents over I think it was in the November of 2018, and then I had a response back from a legal rep who's lovely. And she said, I don't know what you're talking about, basically. We don't know what this is about. So I was like, okay, well, I've sent my things across to you. So there was like an urgent email to me and to the employment tribunal saying, we're not sure what this is about, so bear with us. So what was supposed to have happened in January 2019 was then postponed until the September 2019. So the whole thing, which could have been done months earlier, at least come to some kind of resolution, just dragged on. So it was really, really stressful, particularly as working in an environment where you've essentially bitten the hand that feeds you. Really, I've never been anyone who wants to kind of make a fuss for the sake of it. They just felt like this was more important than sort of letting it lie, really. So that's why we went through all this, and that's kind of how we got to the employment tribunal stage, really.
Okay, and so I mean, presumably in the meantime, the opportunity you were trying to create for you to take time off to look after the new baby and for Laura to not have her career interrupted, presumably that's all been blown out the water.
Yeah.
So I mean, did you get to take a bunch of time off? Did you find ways of managing that didn't, you know, that were acceptable?
Yeah, well, we had the first 2 weeks, which was fantastic, because that was just like obviously brand new to it all. It was right, just chaos. But I'm sure a second time, so it can't be that bad. But it was. But we were very lucky, very fortunate with family. Got reined in. Laura's sister was just still is amazing. And Laura's mum and different relatives came in to help out while Laura worked, and I took leave when I could. And yeah, I think it was sometime during, just prior to the employment tribunal. I think I went under then. I've discovered a lot about myself, and just in terms of how I always thought I was laid back and calm, and I think I am to an extent, but I think I was more stress avoidant. So when stress came up, I was open the door to it all the time, continually. I think it just wore me down. I felt kind of really frayed, like this old dry rope that was just getting frayed and frayed and frayed. And so I ended up having a number of months off work, which was rubbish, because those are the times you want to be on your best form. And, there's parts of that time I don't really remember much about those good moments with Elijah. So that was, in addition, was an extra bit of rubbish, really, an extra layer that.
And so the legal battle continues, and we get to, and along the way you did a crowdfunding thing. That's when I became aware of the case you were bringing. So you managed to raise the money to allow you to go and appeal. Yeah. So tell us a bit about that. How much are we talking about that it cost you?
Well, it all stemmed from after losing the employment tribunal hearing. It was me against the barrister. So it was just like, I don't know, like Mr. Bean against Mike Tyson. It was just, and I was no chance. I was absolutely on the rope from the start. Immediately, But he's fantastic at his job, and I respect him for that. But one of the things he said was, when I was sort of saying, I hope in 10 years' time there'll be no need for this kind of stuff, because it's blatantly morally wrong.
Yeah.
But Mr. Price, we don't live in a perfect world. So when I heard that, I was just like, I had nothing. I just like, I'm getting nowhere with this guy. But so they won, and then we had, like, I think it's a 4-week window to appeal.
Right.
In that time, I put up a petition to see if there's some support, just to try and get it. And the hope of the petition was for it to go, because I was under the understanding that other county councils, if you get over 1,500 signatures, it gets pushed onto the cabinet agenda. And it turned out it wasn't the case. I didn't know that, so I got the petition out, explained nothing nasty about it. I was just saying, we're challenging this policy. This is what's happened to me. Does anybody want to support this sort of thing? And we got like 1,500 signatures really quick. And I emailed like all 73 county councillors. And had my job threatened by senior management, and as did my line manager, which is absolutely bonkers. But that's probably a story which is probably I probably shouldn't go into in too much depth, because I don't want to sort of start another years of mess. But so we got to that situation where we wanted to appeal, and then we basically agreed that we've gone this far, let's push and go for it. And so through a wedding party, someone lovely who's a solicitor spoke to my sister-in-law and said, I've heard what Baz and Laura are doing. Can you ask them to give me a call? So I did, and that sort of gave us the encouragement to go, okay, let's do this. And we asked them for a quote, and they said about $5,000. So okay, well, let's try and crowdfund this. So we got onto the Crowd Justice website, and they were fantastic. I never heard of them before. I had no idea what they were about. They just give the opportunity to kind of raise what your issue is, and update people all along the way. And it's kind of a journey, I guess. And so that sounds a bit cringe. I always think of roadmaps and journeys, but it was essentially our lifespan for those 3 years. And we got lots of money raised. I'd say the majority was mostly our money, but the last push at the end, the last few grand, was people's generosity. It was fantastic. And then it wasn't me standing against a barrister again. It was a barrister against a barrister. So it was a far more even fight there.
Okay. And so we get to well, just when was it? March of this year?
January 26th this year, we had the
January.
employment period. And that obviously, given the COVIDian times that we live in, it was absolutely just surreal because we sat there on a Zoom chat like this, but obviously with about, I think it was 8 faces there and lots of tax below for the solicitors and people who were watching in. And I was so how clueless I was to the legal thing. I put a that when I popped up on the screen, I was there to sort of say hello. I thought I'd introduce myself. Turns out I didn't have to, so I was there like an umpty, stood there and good morning to everyone. And the judge looked at me, and I just like, okay,
who are you? Why are you speaking? Yeah.
Camera off, and we watched. And I had 2 separate devices on, and we just watched throughout the day. And it got to midday. Our barrister Anthony Corn was just brilliant. He was really, really good. Just reeling out precedents and comparing to, with Ali's case, the one who challenged all the way through to the Supreme Court about sex discrimination for mums and dads and lost. So it was comparators to this and things that pulled out from different government papers and things like that. So, and it was probably, I think it was a couple of hours he was presenting for, and he was brilliant. Obviously, being biased, everything he said, we were like, well, this is in the bag. We've absolutely got this. And the response from my employer's solicitor was all of 20 minutes. So we were like, well, this is brilliant. And then I think it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the judge said, okay, well, we're going to take good information and we're going to get back to you in due course. And that was it. So we were like, okay, well,
right.
We sort of asked our solicitors what's due course, how long do you think? And because it was COVID and everything, and there's a massive logjam of cases, so we're just grateful to be here, to be honest. But they said, well, if we aim for about 6 weeks, then hopefully we'll be, that'll be the worst case scenario. So I think we got to, was it 10 or 11 weeks, I think, before we found out, and it was obviously not good news.
So okay, so I'm going to post, when I put this up on YouTube and on the Fatherhood Institute website, I'm going to post a link to the finding, the judge's judgment, which, if I've understood it right, I mean, it's very, very detailed and very long-winded when you read these things, but the crux of it seems to be that your argument was that you should be treated the same as somebody taking adoption leave, and the judgment seems to be saying basically you can't compare shared parental leave with adoption leave because there are differences in what each of those things are there to do. Fundamental. Is that your understanding too?
Yeah, my understanding, I think there was, I couldn't tell you where amongst all that, the details from the judge where it is defined, but it does say something along the lines of adoption leave isn't just childcare, but there was no shared parental leave isn't just childcare as well. It's that bond.
Yes. Well, that's what I that's what I kind of felt as well. There was an assumption that shared parental leave was just straightforwardly about childcare, as if it was like, well, yeah, just that, like sitting in a room with a child, making sure that the child is safe, and do you know what I mean? Like that, like no more than that, really. Whereas adoption leave, which I'm sure is the case, there's there's a lot of complexity to adopting a child, and some of that is procedural, like you need to have meetings and all of that to get the to do the matching process and all of that. And you know, there's emotional stuff going on in the background and so on and so on. But like as if the person who's taking the shared parental leave, none of that is happening, and there's no relationship building going on with the child and all of that. It seems a little bit
archaic,
simplistic to me.
Yeah, it really does. It just that, and that's the takeaway for me, was there's no value or stock put in the bond that a dad has with his child, whereas you know, and this was the thing for us, was really worrying, because we were told the potential, if we were to win our case, would be that rather than the council say, okay, we're on board, you know, we'll up the enhanced pay, we were warned by a legal representation that worst case scenario would be they might actually withdraw enhanced pay from adoption leave. And I was thinking, well, that would be the complete opposite to what we're trying to achieve. So that would have been like, so thank God that didn't happen. But like with the adoption leave, I totally agree with what you were saying. And I think in addition, working within children's services, I'm aware of adoption teams that support the family and the adopted child and young person into adulthood. They're there to support, whereas me, the glorified babysitter on shared parental leave, I haven't got a team to access. I'm just basically there, you know, doing the best I can to try and be, you know, a progressive parent, and just to be there and bond with my child. And I mean, I'm no way at all reducing how amazing my own like parents were, but my dad in the early years, you know, he was working. He wasn't an option or even considered to be a thing he would have done. But now it's the message portrayed as that yes, it's there as an option. It's you can touch it, but actually tokenistically you can, but in practice it's not an option yet. So it's ridiculous to offer enhanced shared parental leave without enhanced pay. It's unless you're wealthy, you can't use it. So crazy.
Yeah. Yes, and I mean, I suppose, you know, we at the Institute kind of saw this coming when the shared parental leave system was announced. It's because there is a large, a huge voluntary element on the part of employers, and so when you see employers who have really recognized the potential of shared parental leave and have thrown themselves behind it by enhancing the pay and promoting the whole concept to their workforce, men and women, you know, you see how great a system like that could be, because you get mothers and fathers able to make rational choices, whatever choice makes sense to their family, and you know, men taking a good amount of time off and living the life of a hands-on parent and understanding their child through you know, very deep exposure, eyeball to eyeball with that baby, and doing all the stuff that mums have done, and the mums being able to rely on the dads as equal partners in the whole sort of caregiving game, if you like. So it's very frustrating to know that can exist, but that you have no control over whether your employer is aware of that system, is using that system, let alone kind of really getting the cultural change that can bring about, I suppose. So yeah, I think lots of people feel your pain.
Yeah, that's the. I know obviously we're coming from a biased side of the fence, but no, everyone I've spoken to have been like shared how gutted they are and how ridiculous it is and how in the hell this is still happening now. It's 2021, particularly given the nature of how mums were stepped on again during COVID times, and it was just massively aware. Anyone can see the difference there and how the gender pay gap, the gender care gap. Of any talk of it being this new progressive way of contemporary thinking, it's not happening in practice. It's completely ridiculous, and it's yeah. So things need to change, and they should have changed ages ago. When they implemented this in 2015, they must have been aware that this was just like something that's going to be challenged down the line. So why not embrace it and make employers responsible for their workforce, for their own labour force, rather than just going, well, you can give them if you want to, or don't bother, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So where has this left you now? I mean, I'm assuming that in terms of the sort of legal battle, you've had a go, it didn't work, and you can't keep pursuing this forever, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and it is draining. Definitely the stress of it all initially front loaded because I was trying to do it myself, and I'm nowhere in any shape or form qualified to do so. So that was really apparent. But once we had the solicitors on board, and they were fantastic and always keeping us updated. And then when the barrister got involved, it was more. The only thing worrying was about me losing my job, because the crowdfund, you've got to be open, and you've got, I can't just crowdfund anybody what it's about, because no one's going to want to invest in that idea or want to get involved. So by challenging a policy, I'm effectively challenging my employer, which then could embarrass them. So which is ridiculous, because why you'd be embarrassed about wanting to actually produce something that's in their own interest for the labour force.
Mm-hmm.
So where it's left us is that we could appeal to the Court of Appeal, but the Court of Appeal would have cost us, quoted, around 10 grand or 10,000, so minimum of 10 grand. And then if we'd lost, we were told that a potential warning would be that we might have to pick up the legal fees of Powys as well, my employers. So if we got into this and lost again, we could have been, we never would have raised, unless we got very, very fortunate and people got on board, we would never have raised over 20 grand. So it was just that, having two kids under 3, under 2.5, one's squawking in the room of him now. He's having a clutch. But so all that money and time that would take to invest into another 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes, thought of it was just like, I don't think we've cut our losses. I think we're just proud of pushing it as far as we can as our little family team. But and with all the fantastic people who put money in, behind us into our legal fight. But we just can't do it anymore. We're done. We can't take that gamble of losing that much money again. But,
when you look back, do you feel? How do you feel about it, or are you feeling regretful that you did this, or do you feel? I feel like you should be proud of yourselves for sticking your neck on the line about it.
Thank you. We are proud, I think, without sounding too what's the word? Too twee about it, I suppose. Like what the most we've got out of this now is going to be it's Eliza's 2.5, George is 9 months. So I think when they're late primary school age, or if they ever ask us what about quality or stereotypes or things like that, we can be really proud and say, actually, this is what we did. What we tried. Lots of people we know were thinking the same way as us, but unfortunately it didn't happen then. I'm hoping that when they're sort of hitting high school age, that this will be overturned by then, all this nonsense. Rather than different camps of comparing mums to dads to adoptive, it's just going to be one big umbrella of, you're a parent, you're bringing up this little human, how is it best suited within your contemporary needs of your family dynamic to give your kids your best, like what's needed. That should be the win. But so I guess we're proud, but hopefully longer term it'll be good for the kids to kind of have like an understanding of what's important, and it's always important to stand up for what you believe in. But there are days when I think given this chance over again. I definitely wouldn't have gone at it on my own. I would have gone, if I'd known what I know now, I definitely would have gone for the crowdfunding straight off the bat and tried to kind of challenge early on. But yeah, as it is, obviously, there's no turning that clock back.
And has there been any effect, do you think, at your employers? Do you think this might shift their thinking, or has it sort of endangered your career? What's been the impact, do you think?
From my perspective, and I touched on it before, being asked, am I willing to lose my job over this, and was I going to apologise for this? Then, for this, again, the knock on to my line manager as well. I'm acutely aware that I've not made a fantastic impression of myself. I've been an employee there this is my 13th year there, and I've never kind of been one to kind of be awkward or be prickly. If anything, more likely to get walked over. And I think the longer I've been and the more assertive I've become, and the more I just thought, you know what, this is something that needs to be challenged. So and 10 years ago, I probably would have gone, easy life, I'm not going to challenge anything, we'll just get on with it. But now I was just like, well, it's wrong, so it needs to be challenged. So I think, yeah, in short, I love where I work, I love my job, I love my colleagues, and my sort of my old line manager, and also new people in now as well. But above, I've lost any kind of attachment to the sort of corporate nature of it, and yeah, so that side of it for me, not wanting to be there particularly anymore, is horrible, because I've got a job that I love, and to do it elsewhere, I'd have to commute out of county and things, so it would just have a knock-on effect to not seeing the family as much. So it just seems like a whole pointless. Yeah, so I would say that if there was, I can't imagine me being very liked up top, if I'm honest, given this recent times. But having said that, I had support from the very top, from the chief exec. She was brilliant. She just said, she assured me my job was safe, despite being open and honest about this. Also, when I heard that, it was the day before the Employment Appeal Tribunal, so that was just like, I could almost feel my shoulders drop, and I was like, oh, thank God,
Yeah.
Having nearly 2 years of like that sword of Damocles over my head, just thinking, as soon as this is over, once the legal bit's done, that's your job gone. So that was all the way through, and until the very day before, when I had that sort of reprieve, I guess, from the gallows. So that was amazing to think I can still support the family and not having done all this and then being unemployed. So so I think I've definitely damaged my stock in where I work, in terms of, like, if I decide to kind of progress up through, not that I have, because I think, perhaps not to be generalized, but I think that people on the ground, we probably got more of a realistic idea of what's needed with families and whatnot, and what's important, why values are important. But I think as soon as you kind of elevate to a strategic level, I'm afraid you get caught up in government jargon and tokenism.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm probably not loved, to be honest, where I am, but I've been there for a long time. So, and if something comes of it, then so be it. I'm.
And maybe it's tough when you're the one who's taking the stand, and you're doing so on your own, and for all you know, your job might be on the line. But I guess we need more dads like you, probably, to do that, because what's the alternative? If we as men don't stand up for what we believe in this area of life, maybe things will just keep going as they are, and this area of life, the whole area of family and looking after children and all of that, will stay where the law would have it stay, which is, in the hands of women. So I think that's why you should be proud of what you've done, because you're one of not many men who have stood up and said, actually, I there is this more important stuff that I quite reasonably want to be engaged in for a period. It's not like you were saying, I demand that the state pays me to look after children for the rest of my life. It's a defined period, and so actually, what you were looking for was entirely reasonable, and you stood up and said that. I feel like we should have more guys doing the same.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
So,
yeah. And it's not a pleasant place putting your head up above the parapet, because it's it's a matter of time before you're going to get your head lopped off. So yeah, but it shouldn't be that way. It absolutely shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't need a funding pot or a crowd justice website. You shouldn't need these things. It's given the true value of what we need is everything stems from family. So if you get your family dynamics right, then you've got a foundation for life, haven't you? So, and the whole attachment thing, I've been working with families and everything for a long time and done lots about attachment theory. There's a massive one side onto how important it is for mums, and that bonding is huge. And additionally, it should be as huge for dads. Like, I get the recovery. That's a no-brainer. The mums carry the baby, they give birth. It's not, I've seen it quite recently a few times, and it's incredible. And you think, how can a human body do this? And the mental health side of it is immense. But then no one talks about, okay, so what if the dad gets postnatal depression? No one talks about these things. It's just seen as like, well, why is he depressed? What's his problem? He's not done anything. Yeah. And it's always going to stay that way if we're seen as being a glorified wannabe babysitter who wants to take shared parental leave. And it's blows my mind how it's still happening now. But
well, the good news is, I don't know if you've seen the headline in today's Guardian.
No.
Which is, and I quote, "Shared parental leave, scrap deeply flawed policy, say campaigners." Shared parental leave is a deeply flawed and chronically failing policy that should be scrapped and placed with a use it or lose it period of paid leave for mothers and fathers, according to campaigners, trade unions, and economists. So we are not alone. The fight continues. Thank you very much for the part that you have played in it. And yeah, I'll close this off here and wish you all the best, to you and Laura and the two little ones. And yeah, hopefully everything will settle down with the work. And you never know, because sometimes these, whatever that phrase is about the throwing a stone in a pond and the ripples, it could be that your employers end up having a change of heart and it's all down to you. Who knows? All right. Well, listen, thanks very much. And yeah, stay in touch.
Thanks for your time.
Okay. Cheers.